Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, and he wasn't a co-host yesterday. He was his own host. Congratulations on your program, Daniel.
Ooh, I'm glad you're back, Dr. Paul. That was heavy lifting.
You haven't been in politics enough. You have to, adjust. No, I watched it. I saw you did a great job, and I was afraid I'd lose my job, but I'm back at it, and you're my co-host here on this program. And we're going to talk about foreign policy, and we're going to talk about, this little war that's been going on a while. 18 going on, 19 years, yeah. Afghanistan, but it is in the news. There's this desire for peace. I'm sure there's some people in the administration who are sincerely wanting to have peace, but it's a very fragile attempt, from my viewpoint, coming up with a treaty between the Taliban and the United States, which seems a little bit strange. If there's a war going on, we're not even dealing with the government. It would have to be that we're fighting a government. No, we're fighting the Taliban, and the discussions have been going on for a long time. I would give Trump credit. He probably does want peace, but sometimes people want peace on their terms. I don't think the peace that Trump is looking for quite would match what we would do, because he probably is in the position of having a lot less troops there and having a presence there, but having troops there for strategic reasons, and we'll talk about that, the various reasons why we haven't given up on Afghanistan. But it's been a long time. But the other thing that brought it to our attention this weekend was, in spite of this, on being on the verge of the announcement of the peace treaty and signed, sealed, and delivered, 2 Americans got killed. Well, Taliban, did they do it? No, they didn't do it. Did Al-Qaeda do it? Or some of these ISIS fighters, did they do it? Just who did this? It turns out it's the Afghan government, military people, because you don't ever know who's on whose side. And the 2 Americans died. I think 6 more are wounded. Doesn't sound like much, but it tells you about the fragility of the system. And it's going to be very, very tough to be removing the remainder of our troops at the same time of not having more violence break out, because we usually hang around for a reason. We could have left Iraq a long time ago, but we always hang around, and look, we're still getting into having problems there. And some places we have a very minor presence, but we're always involved. In Libya, we're still involved very much in Syria. It's easy, it seems, for our presidents to get us in, but very, very difficult to get out. And we heard that term a lot when we were working on this issue in Washington. What's your exit strategy? Yeah. But they never had one. And probably the military-industrial complex might not want one, because when you think of all the nonsense going on here, who won? Who's winning this war? I imagine on the top of that list is the military establishment and the military-industrial complex. A lot of money has been made there. So that's a tragedy, and it's also a tragedy that the American people are not as involved, and they should be, because that's a large number of people. They're the ones paying all the bills, and yet they're not really included. Of course, the Congress and the president is supposed to represent the people, but so far I would say 18 years did not do much for the American people, for the finances of the American people, nor for the liberties of the American people.
And I'm sure the kids of the people we initially started fighting are now fighting us there. Right. So there you have it. But these 2 Americans killed by their own allies tells you something else that's so important, and you've talked about this a lot. It tells you how much American occupation of Afghanistan is resented and how much the troops are hated. And we could turn to someone like Robert Pape and understand this. Nobody likes to have the country occupied. So if you want to hit some Americans, join the military, pretend that you're with them, and then when the first opportunity comes, that's why they'll never have any peace. We'll never have any peace as long as we stay in Afghanistan, despite Washington in unison saying the opposite. But so here's the new deal, and we talked about this because the deal was almost launched, about a year ago, several months ago, this long-standing talks between the US and the Taliban. And as you say, the Afghan government's not even part of it. Just go in there and sit down and shut up, But so the new deal is coming out. And it's the reason we're talking about today is on February 22nd, just a couple days from now, they're going to launch a 7-day, quote, reduction in violence. Apparently, there are all kinds of metrics to measure this. But if this works, if there's a drawdown in violence on the part of the Taliban, then the U.S. will begin a 135-day drawdown of U.S. troops from 13,000 down to 8,600. The big question, and we have not seen the deal, nobody's seen the deal except maybe the Taliban, maybe even the Afghan government, is what happens next. That's the big speculation, and that's why our first thought when we talked about this topic is, let's read the fine print.
Right. It's been going on a long time, and Trump is bound to get some blame somewhere along the way. But this particular war that's going on, I would say he deserves the least amount of blame of our recent president. I mean, yeah. I think George W. Bush had a little bit to do with all this. But what about Obama? You know, in 2008, in that campaign that I was involved in, he was talking about the good war. you know, that Afghanistan was good war, but not that dumb war over in Iraq, and he wasn't supporting of that. But you know, the old saying that there's no bad peace and no good war.
Yeah.
So, but he was claiming this was a good war, and I'm sure by now he probably is thinking differently. But it's sort of talk a lot of times about how to appease the people. But there's so much complacency and so much ignorance when it comes to the people who talk about it. You know, you do have the people don't really keep up. The members of Congress should keep up, but they don't keep up like they should. And they're very influenced by, you know, the special interests. And yet the people who make a lot of noise are the ones who are pulling the strings, and neocon leadership, very powerful. Now, if you're looking for blame in this administration, there's two different things going on. Good intentions, do this, bring troops home. At the same time, the people that are assigned to really carry through, they're not exactly his friends.
Yeah.
And Trump, I know, has realized this in the Justice Department,
oh, yeah.
and the CIA and the FBI, and he's finally starting to get rid of them. But why should they be there in the foreign policy, undermining his intention? So it's still a mess. So I don't know if you're going to predict in this program exactly how successful this program is going to be. But I think right now I'm rather skeptical. I just don't think that much will come of this. But it's better than not trying. But yeah. Only time will tell if it has improved anything.
Well, you know, Obama did a lot of dumb things and bad things, but he did one smart thing, I think. And I think I read this on his first day as president, he fired every single ambassador.
Wow.
He brought in all of his own people. And Trump didn't do that. He left all these people in that hate his guts, that hated everything he said on the campaign trail, and then he's scratching his head, wondering why they're not following his orders. But, you know, when you think about an 18-year war in Afghanistan, how many Americans really understand that the Taliban never attacked us? They had nothing to do with 9/11. You know, it's still ingrained. You ask people, Afghanistan, well, we got to fight because they attacked us on 9/11. Well, the person who did it was not Afghani. He was Saudi, and he's gone. He's dead, long dead and buried. So it's just kind of a war that perpetuates. I saw a piece by David Ignatius, you know, and he's considered the deep state's conduit to the media. You know, they'll leak him all the stuff. The CIA will leak him all the stuff. And he's commenting on this peace deal. And as you can imagine, the establishment in Washington's not too thrilled about this deal. His piece out today, I think it's today, or yesterday, Trump's Afghan gamble. It's a gamble. And only in D.C. is getting out of an 18-year war considered a gamble, you know? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, you know, and we did get more information recently, thanks to the investigations that actually got published in the Washington Post.
In the Post, yeah.
About the Afghan papers. And way too late, but at least the truth does come out, and there's a lot of information there that shows that it was based and continued on many, many lies. And that's about the way it works. And then you have the contest of lies when you get involved within our Congress. You know, it's not like only one side tells only the truth and the other side tells only the lies. There's a lot of, I'll one up you. I can tell a better lie than that, you know. And I always think that when this goes back and forth, some of these people who continue it actually lie enough that they believe their own lies. You know, they get sold on this and they don't want to be challenged. But it has been a terrible cost. 2,300 soldiers died, 20,000 bad injuries there. $1 trillion, that's just chump change, a little dollar here and dollar there. But the other thing that are the non-people that aren't counted, and that's the 500,000 Afghanis that have been killed. Now you say, well, some of that fighting would have gone on, but no, most of the fighting has been a consequence of our invasion and taking over that government as a strategic reason. It wasn't tactical just for the for 9/11.
Yeah.
It was strategic, and they were thinking about a particular country that they talk about all the time. And we happen to know the administration has a very strong position on it, and that has to do with Iran.
Yeah, with Iran, that's a big factor. You also have natural resources there that there's a report, I think there was a profile in Vanity Fair magazine where Pete Buttigieg, running for president, Democratic Party, some really fishy ties to the CIA, for sure. He's got a big poster in his living room with all the natural resources of Afghanistan, probably looking at that and slobbering every day. But, you started mentioning the Afghanistan papers. That was published in the Washington Post, the same paper as David Ignatius, It's a Big Gamble. And it's as if this never happened. This is a bombshell. This is like the Pentagon Papers. This is a bombshell. Every president lied through their teeth. Every senior official, every defense secretary, they lied constantly. And yet still Washington's reaction is a big yawn. Oh, we can't get out too fast. We can't get out too fast. It's just incredible.
Look how many times it was repeated that the whole reason why there was a uptick in the war in Iraq is, they left too soon. We left too soon. We should have stayed, put more troops in. You've heard some of the neocon senators in this country said they should have never left. They should send more, and they keep beating the war drums. But they've also shifted policy. We're talking about the policy that is real, but there is the other one that they get sold on, and that is on this nation building. They think for us to have a presence and to have, to participate in our empire, that we have to do a little bit more. And at least on the surface, we have to build a democracy. We have to have a new nation here. And of course, for some reason, it's never been well received in Afghanistan. Outsiders coming in and telling the various tribals that exist there how they should live together and get along together. When they're left to their own, they're not killing each other. It's only when we go in and pick a side and aggravate, and then we lose people, lose money, and so here's an effort. And to make for peace, it's not likely to bring about peace, because I think the policy basically is not being changed. They want to pretend they're moving toward peace. At the same time, the policy is a presence there. It's strategic for maintaining and containing Iran. It's there to make sure they have pipelines and natural resources and all these things. So they're not. The United States is not likely to leave, and they think that the world would be just chaos and very violent. I happen to think the opposite. I think that maybe the Russians learned their lessons when they were the Soviet Union. And, they bit the dust from it. They must be laughing, about us doing that. Of course, we helped defeat the Soviets, and people would say it was all worth it. Worth it because we got involved. But then we stayed, and the battles continue. And I think that the Taliban, at least Americans that were resent, and they will always try to kill Americans over there, even though they're not Al-Qaeda. But when Al-Qaeda gets involved, they'll go anywhere, any place they want to go and make it a world event to find Americans. But the whole thing is, this whole idea, and you already mentioned it, that if we all of a sudden left, the Taliban's not going to chase us back to Washington. They're not going to do it. So, but that means we're back to square one, which is the reason we try to produce this program, and that is defining a foreign policy quite different from what we've had for 100 years.
That's right. And you mentioned all the goodies that are over there that they covet. Don't forget another one, opium. They got a lot of it over there. You know, that CIA budget probably would be cut in half if they didn't have access to all those drugs to sell. But you touched on something else I think that's really important, the nation-building aspect of the war. Why is this part so popular? That's because I would argue that it is a complex every bit as big as the military-industrial complex, the nation-building industrial complex, because it's kind of like what you always say about spending. The Democrats will turn the other way for an increase in military spending if they get an increase in welfare spending. The Republicans will turn the other way on welfare spending if they get more warfare spending, you know. So you have all of these people, all of these USAID and all of its thousands of contractors. That's big business in Washington too. It's not only Lockheed Martin and all these guys. It's all of these subcontractors that are going to go down there and remake their society. So it's big business for nation building too.
And the job there, the theoretical job is they don't rebuild anything.
No.
And then they wonder why there is corruption there. Well, if you subsidize corruption, you get more of it. And that is the way it's operated on. And it's something, I guess, this week we may hear that the treaty went into effect, but if somebody really, really doesn't want it to work, we might end up seeing something bigger than a bomb here and there. They might really want to say, we're not ready to surrender yet. We want to keep this fight going on because we profit from this fight.
Profit from the fight. Well, I just had one other point I wanted to make, Dr. Paul, and that's the reaction in Washington to even the suggestion that there's going to be some peace and you're going to bring back some troops. And it is totally bipartisan, as you know better than anyone. Now, here's Lindsey Graham. This is quoted from Ignatius's piece. The president is overly concerned about the problem of still being there in November. Don't worry. And here's Bob Menendez, New Jersey Democrat. We have to make very clear that we're not leaving quickly because that's the only way we have a chance for peace. And here's Chris Coons. He's a Democratic senator from Delaware. This captures it all, Dr. Paul. The odds are that this ends badly, this meaning the troop drawdown. This is going to end badly. If our objective really is a politically viable withdrawal, Trump should recognize there's a strong bipartisan commitment to staying the course and not leaving without a real peace. This is Washington left and right. But here's what America says. This is 2 polls from last year. 59% of Americans said the Afghan war was not worth it. 81% of Trump voters, listen up, Mr. President, 81% of Trump voters says we should get out of Afghanistan. Who do you want to listen to? Lindsey Graham, Bob Menendez, or the people that are going to actually vote for you in November? So hopefully you're paying attention. And I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Paul.
Right. There's estimated 12,000 troops, our troops in Afghanistan. And they've talked about bringing 4,000 back and on again, off again, what they're going to do. But, if there's 12 and they bring back 4,000 or 6,000, it really doesn't matter if the purpose for us to be there is these other reasons that we mentioned. They're not going to give up on that. And this is something that has been around for a long time. And, even if we picked up and brought home the 12,000 forces, because what are they doing? They're not out there fighting these tribes right now. They're just being vulnerable. But they do this, and they think that they're going to clean it up if it looks like there are less troops. But where are we around the world? We don't have the Marines and huge troops around the world in these many countries, but we're in militarily 170 countries, but we're involved financially, we're involved with the CIA, special forces, we get involved in their elections, we're very, very engaged. So this is just one little bit when you talk about whether or not we're going to bring those troops home or not. But the people who want to have total control want the troops plus all these other things. But it's all a philosophy of interventionism and this pretense of American exceptionalism, that it is only American democracy that can make the world a better place. And as I've said before, how did they ever get locked in on this democracy? How did the liberals get locked in on democracy? That means the majority rules over the minority. So as long as the majority is on their side, then they're for democracy. But are they for democracy, if it hurts the minorities? Because it just doesn't work. It wasn't democracy that we were given. We were given a system of government that was supposed to understand and protect individual liberty in the absence of violence, in the absence of militarism, the absence of an aggressive government overseas. That is quite a bit different than what we have, and there's no reason for us to quit looking for it, because something has to break, and if it does and when it does, hopefully we can help rebuild it into a system that is based on peace and prosperity and non-intervention in our foreign policy. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.